Hey, what's going on, everybody? It's thye Prime back here again. Today we're going to be taking a look at Anbernic's all-new wireless controller. So this is a company that usually makes handhelds, but now they've made a controller, and I've actually been talking about this for some time. Their D-pads on a lot of their retro handhelds are definitely some of the best when it comes to those retro handhelds, so I did want to see some of that come over to a wireless controller, and we finally got it with the new PG01. They basically threw everything they know about handheld controls into this controller. We've got a 6-axis gyro, it's got dual vibration motors, it's Bluetooth or 2.4, and you can use it as a wired controller. It's got built-in RGB, Hall effect joysticks, Hall effect triggers, but one of the best things about this controller is the price. Retail on this is only $17.99, and over on their website right now, they've got $3 off. So it comes out to be $15, and for what we're getting here, I do think it's totally worth it when we see other controllers on the market running from $30 up to $80. This thing basically does it all, and it's even compatible with the Nintendo Switch. I've been testing this controller out for the past few days, and the only thing I would like to see changed here is just add a little more weight. So they could actually add some weights inside. It does feel a bit light, but we've got all of the features that you need on a modern day controller. And at the time of making this video, they are offering this in 3 different color variants. So we've got the black, there's a radiant purple, and a beige white. Out of the 3, I personally like the beige white version. And inside of the box, along with the controller, we're also going to get a USB Type-C cable and a 2.4 GHz USB dongle. Remember, this will work in the 2.4 GHz mode using this dongle. It's also got Bluetooth 5.3, and you can use it as a wired controller. Heading over to the product page, you can see price right here, $14.99. Regular is $18. There's $3 off for the pre-order, but even at $18, it's going to be hard to beat something like this. Face buttons, A, B, X, Y, and even the shoulder buttons are using conductive rubber underneath it. It supports Bluetooth 5.3, wired connection, and 2.4 GHz. Remember, we get that dongle along with it. Kind of the Xbox layout, but you can switch this through software if you want to. Hall effect joysticks, Hall effect triggers, and in wired mode, this is polling at 400 Hz, Bluetooth mode 150, obviously that's going to be the slowest, and 2.4, 200 Hz polling rate. 600 milliamp hour battery with up to 9 hours of play time. It'll charge in 2.5 hours, and I can't tell you how long standby is. I actually haven't even plugged these in, so they're just right out of the box. I've had them for about 4 days, been messing around with all 3 of them with different devices so far. Haven't had to charge them yet. Dual vibration motors built in, and a 6-axis gyro. This will work with the Switch, and I'm not a huge gyro fan, but it's here if you want to use something like this. Obviously, we've got that RGB up front. Now, one thing I haven't been able to do is control the brightness on it. We can totally disable it, and there's 5 different modes. We'll take a look in just a bit. Brightness control isn't listed in the manual, so I'm not exactly sure if it can be controlled. And of course, with a controller like this, it's going to work for Android, PC, it'll work with the Steam Deck, I've paired it up. ROG Ally, that's running Windows, iOS, so if you want to connect this to your iPhone or iPad, and even the Nintendo Switch. It's really easy to pair this controller up, whether you're using Bluetooth or that 2.4 GHz dongle, and directly from the controller, we can change the RGB. So there are a few different modes, but again, there's no brightness control, at least that I can find in the manual or testing out different key combos. It could be something I'm overlooking here, but I've tested a bunch of things. Either way, the RGB here can be totally disabled if you don't want it going. And obviously, you will get better battery life with those disabled, but we've also got those 4 LED indicators right in the middle, and this will kind of tell us which mode we're in, which player we are. So pairing this up to the Switch will require a different key combination. Everything's listed in the manual. But I do like the way they've got this thing set up. And it's also got some really grippy texture on the back there, so it's not going to fall out of your hand. We've also got 2 macro buttons and our turbo button around back. This thing fits right in your hands. They definitely did some research here when it comes to ergonomics, and this D-pad does feel nice. I'm really glad they went with conductive rubber under all of the buttons that matter. So the face buttons, the D-pad, and even the bumpers. And with the bumpers, I could have went with micro switches. I would have been fine with that. I personally do like the roll we have here. So if you do play on the inner side of the D-pad, you'll be right at home with this, or you can go right around the edge. Now I wanted to show you this thing in action, and the first thing we've got it paired up to is Android. This is actually a Samsung Galaxy S24 Ultra running DeX connected to a larger screen. I haven't done anything except for pair this up over Bluetooth. It's basically being recognized as an Xbox controller, and games that support controllers on Android are just going to work with it. So that means when it comes to a lot of the emulators out there, the controller is already going to be mapped for you. Now, there are some cases where you always have to map a controller no matter what you're using, like the Dolphin emulator. And there are games on Android that don't natively support controllers, like Genshin Impact. With a game like that, you will have to use a third-party mapper. But if you're on iOS, this is actually going to sync up to, let's say, your iPad or your iPhone and show up as kind of a DS4 or a PlayStation 4 controller. And from there, anything in the Apple Arcade, even Genshin Impact, does support controllers over there. And this controller does work really well with iOS. I was using it with the new iPad mini earlier today, and yeah, I didn't have an issue with any of the games that I wanted to play. Even with Call of Duty Mobile, it just recognized the controller, picked it right up, and I was able to use it. I've also got that home button, so if you're on Android, it'll bring you right home. Next thing I wanted to do here was test out the D-pad using the Redream emulator with Marvel vs. Capcom 2. Again, it does feel pretty nice with the roll here. I am missing a few here and there, but I really think it comes down to user error. In my opinion, it's not the best D-pad that they've ever produced, but it does work out pretty decently. One of my main use case scenarios with this controller is actually with my laptop or even a gaming PC. I've been connected over Bluetooth, but I did want to test out this dongle, so we'll go ahead and plug it in. We're going to hold the button on the dongle for about 3 seconds. Going to go into pairing mode. Now from the controller, we'll hold the pairing button and Y. Should get some rapid flashing, and it immediately connected. And now we're in 2.4 gigahertz mode instead of Bluetooth. So we do have a higher polling rate, 200 hertz here instead of 150 with Bluetooth. And I'll tell you what, even with racing games, this controller feels really nice. I do want to show you that we've got those linear triggers around back. So they are Hall-based, and you can see that just giving a little bit of input there, putting a little bit of gas on it. Great for drifting, launch control in these racing games. This thing also has a turbo function built in that we can use with basically any button on here. So you can see turbo is off right now, but if I hold the button that I want to enable turbo with, and then press the turbo button on the rear of the controller, we're in turbo mode. There's actually 2 different speeds, so if I press that turbo button again around back, it'll go to the fastest rapid fire mode, and then we can totally disable it by pressing it one more time. So far, I've tested this controller on the Steam Deck, so it does work in Linux, but I did have to enable the switch mode on the controller, so it showed up as a switch controller. I've tested it with iOS, Android, and Windows. It's actually a really decent controller at that $18 price point. Now that's retail. With that coupon, you do save $3. I guess that's the pre-order special that they got going on. So basically, it's a $15 controller with a built-in 6-axis gyro, Hall-based analog sticks, Hall-based triggers. It gets around 9 hours of continuous gameplay out of this thing. Charge it up in 2.5. Also have that RGB and conductive pads under the buttons that matter. It's really hard to beat something like this, even at that retail of $18. I'm going to be messing around with these for the next few days, but if you're interested in learning a little more, maybe even putting a pre-order in, I will leave some links down below. You will see these pop up here and there in some of my videos, but that's going to wrap it up for this one. If you've got any questions, let me know down below. And like always, thanks for watching.